Hey, welcome in everyone to Dom Time. Tonight, coming off Robert Menendez and the allegations that are out there, so much so that many newspapers in New Jersey, New York Times and others are saying that he ought to step down from his chairmanship, foreign relations, until this matter is settled about prostitution, about other alleged unethical behavior. And if you want to get in to talk with Christine Flowers, with me, or John Featherman, our guest, call 866-472-8868, 866-472-8868. We'll take your calls just in a moment. Christine, we had a lot there from Dennis Hoff and from John. What do you see as any of the flaws here of what would happen if we legalize or decriminalize prostitution? Well, you know, the argument has always been that if you decriminalize it, you're going to get rid of the black market. And that really hasn't been borne out by a lot of the statistics. That what happens is if you decriminalize something and you make it more available, more accessible, and this argument's been used with the legalization of drugs, it creates a larger market. It doesn't go underground, and then you need, so if you have more of a demand, you need to get a larger supply, and that's going to increase sex trafficking. That's going to increase women who might otherwise not have entered the field, so to speak, to engage in it. And you know, it really, you can separate this whole thing from the church and morals and what have you. It has to do with a profession, so-called the oldest profession, that essentially demeans a woman or a man who engages in it. When you're providing part of your body for remuneration, there's something completely wrong with that. And the whole idea of, well, let me do what I want with my own body, same argument they use with abortion. My body, you know, my choice. All right, but John, I mean, isn't that true? Come on now, you're trying to posture here, libertarian, businessman, etc. You can't make sex into a business. It's just that simple. Seinfeld has taught us that, among other things.
Well, let me say this, that if you look at what Christine just said, and I have the utmost of respect for Christine, and I understand where she's coming from. If you want to talk about black markets and you want to talk about effects of decriminalization, because we're not into legalizing. Legalizing would be a free-for-all.
Wait a minute, though. Why not do that?
The reason why we're not is the same reason that we have not legalized alcohol or cigarettes or gambling or driving.
We have legalized that.
We have not legalized it. We've decriminalized it. There is a commission that watches over it. You cannot gamble on the street, but you can gamble in the casino. You cannot buy cigarettes if you're underage. You can't gamble if you're underage. Well, that's underage.
We can set age restrictions.
And we're going to talk about that too. But the general thing is that since we saw prohibition, we have not seen a black market. We have not seen anyone who has been killed because of alcohol becoming decriminalized.
Okay, so where are all these prostitutes? I'm not going to slur Kensington and places like that, or Camden or wherever. Where are they going to go? What do you think they're going to do magically overnight? Are they going to show up at these government-run centers? Tell me your vision of that. Dennis Hoff is going to run these?
It's no different than it is right now. It's already out there. You know, it's sort of funny.
So they'll stay there, though, in the same back alleys, doing the same kinds of thing. It'll just be decriminalized now.
Actually, let's talk about where you're going. And you're going in terms of public safety, public health. When you decriminalize anything, cigarettes, gambling, alcohol, anything, what happens is you have higher standards. So there will be higher standards. And it's interesting because on this day, when Pope Benedict made his decision that he was going to resign, I saw an article in the New York Times. And the article talked about how in 2010, he had a reversal. He had gone to Africa many years earlier, and he said that the only acceptable form of birth control, if you would, was abstinence or being not cheating. And so 2 years later, he was quoted in the New York Times as saying, you know what, there's an extraordinary circumstance because in Africa, we can cut down on the transmission of HIV and AIDS by having
between
condoms.
That wearing a condom versus saying, let's have a bunch of hookers out here and say it's okay.
But that's a big start, and that's where it all begins.
All right, Christine, the disease angle. Is that their strongest point?
I don't think so, because the type, the type of person who is engaging in this kind of an activity is someone who really doesn't have any other option. I mean, let's be honest. The sex workers union of the Bay Area, the woman Carol, I forget her name, I mean, these are women who really don't have other opportunities. This is not something that you don't grow up to say, gosh, I want to grow up and be a prostitute / sex worker. This is not the goal of my life. So they don't have a lot of them are uneducated. A lot of them are victims of abuse themselves.
But let me say to that,
doesn't
this give them an out? outlet then? They're uneducated, they don't have any other skills, so they can make $100,000 doing this.
I don't think that we should provide them with a profession that really is demeaning to them. We should try and provide more schooling for other fields, other trades that aren't going to force them to give up what's a part of their integrity, a part of their identity. To me, and now I am getting somewhat into the spiritual aspect and the moral and the ethical aspect of it, but as a human being, not as a woman, but as a human being, the idea that you're going to use that most fundamental part of yourself, your ability to procreate, your ability to give of yourself and to have someone else be a part of you, you're going to put a price on that. What is that going to do to our society?
Well, what does that do when we put a price on something? This is not different in your view than other human
activity. Let me tell you that not all forms of sex that involve sex workers involve procreation.
That's true.
Let me just say that without getting into all the tawdry details. But let me say in general, nobody's being forced. People are being forced every single day when this is underground. They're being trafficked, they're being forced into slavery, but when all of a sudden you've decriminalized, there isn't one person.
So we're better off if more people, more men I'm talking about here, feel comfortable going to a prostitute publicly. I couldn't vote for Senator Menendez based on this, and a lot of other reasons. But I'm not going to vote for a guy who I know is seeing a prostitute. Could you?
Sure, why not?
Because there's something wrong with it. There's something directly, fundamentally wrong with it, John.
The most powerful people in this world, if they haven't engaged in prostitutes, they've engaged in affairs. We had John Edwards, who was running for president of the United States in an affair, not with a sex worker, but with someone else, John F. Kennedy. It's well known that he had girlfriends.
And I think it's all wrong. I think it's a negative. I think it's a flaw.
Right, and that's fine. You can make that decision. But the reality is, powerful people, particularly powerful men, do these things. And by the way, that's a good reason you should vote for more women in politics.
All right, nicely played. We'd love to get your calls. You get in right now at 866-472-8868. Your call's coming up with John Featherman, Christine Flowers, as we talk about Robert Menendez, the allegations, and legalizing, decriminalizing prostitution. That's straight ahead.